Okay, let us get started with understanding how margin works. Now, as we had mentioned earlier, you can consider every element to be a box. Now, just as a box has four sides, every element on your page will also have four sides, right? So, when we are trying to specify some space or some distance between an element and an adjoining element, we should be able to specify which side of that element we're talking about, right? So let me start by specifying a margin for the left side or the left edge of the change me div. Now let me to start with assign a value of 0, which essentially means that there should not be any space between the left edge of the change me div and the element that lies to its left. So let's save this, hit preview, and well, okay, so you have the change me div which says watch me, and as you can see there is no space between this div and the div to its left. But what if I now go ahead and specify a non-zero value? So what I do is I specify a value of 10 pixels, and I say that okay, please assign a space of 10 pixels between the change me div's left edge and the element that lies to its left. So let's hit preview, and there you go. So as you can see, the browser has inserted a 10 pixel gap between the change me div's left edge and the div that lies to its left. Also note how there is no space that has been inserted between any of the other edges of the change me div and their adjoining elements. So what if we want to assign a space at the top? Well, you can just go and say margin top 20 pixels, right? So let's save this and hit preview. So there you go. So now you have a 10 pixel space to the left of this div and you have a 20 pixel space to the top. What about right? Well, instead of top, you just specify right. And let's save this and hit preview again. And there you go. So now you have a 10 pixel space to this div's left edge, to this div's left, and a 20 pixel space to the right of this div. Once again, there is zero spacing between this div's top edge and the element on top, as well as the div's bottom edge and the element below this element, right? So just like this, we can specify independent margin values for each of the four sides of an element. Now so far we have specified values using pixels, but well, what you can also do is specify values using percentage, right? So let's change 10 pixels to 10%. Let's hit save and hit preview. Oh, so do you see what's happened here? Now we have quite a bit of space that has been introduced between the left edge of the change me div and the div that lies to its left. So how did that happen? Well, the percentage is transformed into a pixel value by considering the width of the containing element. So for example, the div with ID change me is contained within the div with ID main page. So what 10% does is that the browser computes the width of main page, which is the containing element, then finds out what 10% transforms to in pixel terms, and then adds that as the margin value. Okay, so here 10% is essentially 10% of the width of the containing element, which happens to be main page in this case. Great. So now we can, as we've learned, we can specify margin values independently for each edge of your element. But there is also a much neater way or a shorthand to achieve the same result. So let's say we want to achieve this same result by using the shorthand. So how do we do that? Well, we specify margin, then we type in a series of numbers like this. Okay, so let's save this and let's hit preview. So there you go. You get the very same layout. So how does this work? Well, to understand this, let us look at the included external CSS file. So the margin attribute in CSS can have a series of numbers which are arranged as shown here. So we start with the top edge and then move clockwise such that the first number specifies the top margin, the second number specifies the right margin, the third number specifies the bottom margin, and finally the fourth number specifies the left margin. So you can just add a series of numbers and the browser knows exactly what to do with it. We can shorten this further. Okay, so let's look at how we can do that. Now here, let's say we want to assign a 10% margin to the left and right edges and no margin to the top and bottom edges. So for that we can just do something like this. Okay, so here if we just specify two numbers, then the first number stands for the margin values for the top and bottom edges, whereas the second number stands for the margin values for the left and right edges. You can also specify three numbers. So let's say we do this. So what happens here? Well, the first number is the margin for the top edge. The second number is the right margin. The third number is the bottom margin. And since we have not specified the fourth number, well, the browser assumes that the left and right margins are the same. So this is equivalent to this. Alright, great. So just experiment with various ways of specifying margins. As you have already noted, we can even mix units. So we can have a percentage and a pixel unit in the very same margin specification. Now padding works pretty similar in terms of syntax. However, the purpose of padding is very different. As we had already defined, padding essentially introduces a space between the boundary of an element and the content inside it. Alright, so let's see how padding can work. So let's replace margin with padding. Let's save this. So note how the string watch me kind of abuts the left and top edges, right? So now let me add a 10 pixel padding to the top edge, a 1 pixel padding to the right edge, 2 pixels to the bottom edge, and 1 pixel to the left edge. So let's see how this alters our layout. So there you go. So now there is no margin, right? So note how there is absolutely no space that has been introduced between the change_me div and the divs that are adjoining it. However, we find that the content inside the change_me div has been shifted ever so slightly based on the padding values that we have provided. So once again, as we mentioned, the syntax for padding is identical to that for margin. So just experiment with various methods of specifying both margin and padding as well as various values.